Today is Sunday, August 16th, 2026. And the research and data collection we're diving into today covers the period from August 8 to August 15, 2026.
Right.
Welcome to Macroeconomy AI. Today's deep dive is titled AI Observatory, August 8/15, 2026. And man, this past week was intense. We saw an open source AI autonomously hunt for vulnerabilities in a nation's nuclear infrastructure.
Which is terrifying, honestly.
Yeah, completely. Plus, we saw a dominant AI provider hike their prices by like 1,100% overnight. And Google's Gemini just hit 1 billion users.
Yeah, I mean, we are looking at a fundamental rewiring of the global economy here. The systems are scaling up, the subsidies are ending, and the geopolitical maneuvering is just intensifying across the board.
It really is. We have a massive stack of sources to get through today. But before we start breaking down the mechanics of all these shifts, thank you to everyone tuning in. If you find these insights valuable, please take a moment to engage with the show. Drop a like, leave a comment. It really helps us out. And today's deep dive is brought to you by Technova Solutions. This channel, Macroeconomy AI, is dedicated to bringing a compilation of analyses and news on macroeconomics, technology, and artificial intelligence. And Technova is your partner in navigating the enterprise transition to ambient computing.
Right, which is huge right now.
Exactly. Ambient computing is when technology moves from a screen you stare at to a background environment that simply anticipates what you need. Technova helps future-focused companies integrate large language models securely and efficiently into their daily workflows.
Well, let's actually start with that billion-user milestone, because that ties right into ambient computing. The sheer scale of adoption is altering consumer behavior at a real macroeconomic level.
Yeah, so Google officially announced that Gemini surpassed 1 billion monthly active users.
Wow.
I know, right? It's the fastest-growing product in their entire history. But the raw number only tells half the story. The underlying data reveals this massive shift in how we actually interact with computers.
How so?
Well, 63% of these users are interacting by voice.
Over half. That's crazy.
Yeah. And the app is generating over 150 million images a day. But the most striking stat to me, and this is wild, 1 in 5 interactions on Gemini Live now involves the live camera or screen sharing.
Yeah, we are officially witnessing the death of the search bar.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. The traditional interface required us to translate our thoughts into discrete keywords, type them into a little box, and then just sort of filter through links.
Like cavemen.
Right, exactly. But voice and camera integration, it removes that friction entirely. You simply point your device at, like, a broken washing machine and just ask it what's wrong.
I look at this adoption curve, and I immediately see the early days of the smartphone. Like when the iPhone first launched, people treated it like a regular cell phone that just happened to have this kind of clunky web browser on it.
Yeah, nobody saw the app economy coming.
Exactly. It took years for the app economy to mature and fundamentally change how we navigate cities or order food or, communicate. We are in that exact same transitional window right now. The interface is changing, which means the way value is captured, the economy around this is about to change.
It is.
So my question for you is, we have the users, but how does the economy around this actually make money?
Well, that raises a massive economic dilemma for the companies running these models. Processing a simple text query is relatively cheap, but processing a live continuous video and audio stream through a massive neural network,
right,
that costs an astronomical amount of money. The compute power required to sustain 1 billion users doing that is just staggering.
Which brings us to the core issue, right? Monetization. How do you pay for the servers? And OpenAI gave us one answer this week by rolling out ChatGPT ads for their free and Go tier users.
Yeah, across the UK, Mexico, Brazil, Japan, and South Korea.
Yeah. So they're just running ads now.
Right. They are falling back on the old Web 2.0 playbook. Now, they made it clear that advertisers only get aggregated performance data, not access to, user conversations.
Sure.
It's purely a defensive maneuver to subsidize those immense hardware costs. But relying on human eyeballs to view digital billboards is, it's an old paradigm. The real economic frontier is actually moving away from human attention entirely.
Okay, you're talking about SpaceX AI's move this week.
Exactly.
They launched the Grok bot in beta, and the pricing structure completely upends the software industry. Like, they were charging $120 a month for this thing.
Yeah, but this isn't just a conversational chatbot. It's a persistent digital coworker.
Right.
To understand the macroeconomic impact of Grokbot, we have to look at the mechanism. When you use a standard AI today, you make an API call,
So
right?
you ask a question, it answers.
Right. You send a query to a server, the server calculates an answer, sends it back, and the transaction is just over. The AI literally forgets you exist until you type again. But Grokbot operates in its own persistent compute environment. It just sits in the background, continuously monitoring your inbox, managing your calendar, operating your CRM software.
While your laptop is closed.
Exactly.
Right.
While your laptop is closed, executing complex workflows, it only pauses to ping you when it needs human authorization for, like, a high-level decision.
So it's $120 a month for a digital employee that never logs off. I mean, we're talking about a shift from software as a service where you pay a subscription for a tool that a human uses to labor as a service, where the company is paying for continuous autonomous output.
And the labor economics of that are just fascinating.
Yeah, they really are.
Because the transition from tools to autonomous labor means compute is no longer just IT infrastructure, right? It is the raw material of productivity. And the cost of that raw material just experienced a seismic shock this week.
Right. Let's pivot and look at the developer side of the market. DeepSeek released their V4 Pro model, which is specifically designed to handle the exact kind of autonomous coding and agentic tasks that we just talked about. But on the exact same day, they announced API price hikes that are, frankly, hard to comprehend. We're seeing increases ranging from 50% to an unbelievable 1,100%.
Staggering.
They even introduced peak and off-peak pricing tariffs.
Yeah, and the introduction of peak pricing tariffs is a real watershed moment. They are pricing compute the exact same way a municipal utility prices electricity during, a summer heat wave.
It instantly makes me think of the Uber business model.
Oh, exactly.
Like for a decade, Uber subsidized the cost of every single ride with billions in venture capital just to starve out the traditional taxi industry, right? To
Yeah.
capture the market. And the Chinese AI developers have been running that exact same playbook.
Yep, a total scorched earth price war.
Exactly. They offered incredibly cheap API access to corner the global developer market. But now, I guess the era of zero interest rates and infinite venture capital is officially over. They need actual profit margins.
Yeah, and when the underlying cost of your infrastructure dictates your pricing model like that, you really start to see the fragility of the tech ecosystem.
Oh, for sure.
Startups that built their entire business model on the assumption of nearly free Chinese compute are just watching their unit economics evaporate overnight.
It's brutal.
But we cannot analyze this 1,100% price hike purely through the lens of corporate margins. This is deeply intertwined with global geopolitics.
Right, the balkanization of the AI economy.
Exactly. Microsoft's strategy in China is a perfect example of this tension.
Yeah, that investigative report this week was wild. It revealed that Microsoft quietly closed at least 15 offices and joint ventures in China over the last 5 years.
Right.
They apparently even considered pulling out entirely in 2023 because of U.S. export controls.
They considered it, yeah. But they found a highly lucrative strategic position instead. Microsoft realized that Chinese multinationals, companies like ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, they need to operate globally.
Right, they can't just stay in China.
Exactly. And to do that, these Chinese companies must comply with Western data regulations and utilize Western AI infrastructure. So Microsoft stayed. They are selling Azure cloud services and access to Western AI models directly to these entities.
So they are acting as this geopolitical bridge. They're serving Chinese clients, so they're doing it outside of China's domestic borders to avoid the strictest U.S. export bans.
Yeah, think of Microsoft not as a traditional software vendor in this scenario, but more as a digital customs broker.
A customs broker, I like that.
China only represents about 1.5% of Microsoft's overall global revenue. But by positioning themselves right at the choke point between Chinese capital and Western infrastructure, they maintain this massive leverage and profitability without crossing the red lines drawn by Washington.
Wow. And, the common denominator in all these developments, from Grokbot's continuous labor to DeepSeek's utility pricing to Microsoft's geopolitical tightrope, is this insatiable demand for physical computing power.
Yes.
Like, the software cannot exist without the silicon. And the capital expenditures happening right now are just historic.
Oh, we are seeing infrastructure build-outs on a scale normally reserved for, national highway systems or electrical grids.
Right. Over in India, Larsen & Toubro just signed a contract valued between $1.05 billion and $1.57 billion.
Massive.
They're building a unified cluster of 10,000 NVIDIA B300 GPUs in Chennai. And this isn't even a state-funded project. It's being built for a U.S. infrastructure startup called Together AI.
Yeah, deploying 10,000 B300 GPUs in a single facility creates an immense logistical challenge. You're dealing with gigawatts of power consumption, complex liquid cooling requirements.
Just the cooling alone is a nightmare.
Exactly. And the fact that a U.S. startup is funding this in India really highlights the global scramble to secure computing capacity anywhere there is available electricity and technical talent.
And the valuations of the companies attempting to solve these bottlenecks are just going stratospheric right now. Cognition, the company that built the Devon autonomous coding agent, is reportedly in early talks for a funding round that would value them at $40 billion.
Based on a $1 billion revenue run rate?
Yeah, which is insane.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Anthropic is in talks to acquire an Israeli startup named Descartes for $6 billion.
Right.
Now, Descartes doesn't build consumer applications. They build software that makes AI chips run more efficiently.
And that Descartes acquisition is perhaps the most telling signal of where the real value lies in the macroeconomic landscape right now.
How do you mean?
Well, the primary limiting factor in artificial intelligence is no longer the quality of the algorithmic architecture, it's memory bandwidth.
Right.
When an AI processes information, it has to constantly move massive amounts of data back and forth between the memory chips and the processing cores. It essentially creates a traffic jam on the silicon.
So Descartes acts like an advanced traffic control system. Instead of trying to build faster cars, the processors, they're optimizing the flow of the highways so the data doesn't bottleneck.
That is the mechanism, exactly. If Anthropic spends $6 billion on Descartes, and Descartes software can squeeze even a 10 or 15% efficiency gain out of Anthropic's existing server farms.
That's a lot of money saved.
That $6 billion pays for itself very quickly by drastically reducing future hardware purchases and electricity bills.
Okay, the logic holds up for the Descartes acquisition. I get that. But if I'm looking at a $40 billion valuation for Cognition, a company that just hit $1 billion in revenue, I have to ask, are we looking at a classic macroeconomic bubble?
Well, doubling your revenue to $1 billion in 3 months, as Cognition has reportedly done, provides a pretty strong mathematical defense for that valuation in the short term.
Fair point.
However, the systemic risk lies in the debt being accumulated to build these massive data centers. If the adoption curve for enterprise AI flattens if companies decide that autonomous agents aren't actually improving their bottom line, the capital used to buy those NVIDIA clusters essentially becomes toxic debt.
Wow.
We're analyzing the structural architecture of the economy here, and any shift in demand could trigger a significant contraction.
And just to be super clear to you listening, we are unpacking these market forces and structural changes for educational purposes only. Nothing we are discussing today is investment advice.
Right, we are tracking the macro trends, not offering financial guidance.
Exactly. So getting back to it, the vulnerability of these massive centralized compute clusters brings us to probably the most alarming development of the week.
Yeah, this was dark.
When you concentrate billions of dollars of economic infrastructure into a few digital choke points, you create incredibly lucrative targets.
Absolutely. The cybersecurity incident in Taiwan demonstrates exactly what happens when these autonomous capabilities are weaponized.
Yeah, so researchers detailed a 4-day cyber attack on Taiwan's government systems. The attackers utilized 2 open-source AI agents, Hermes and OpenClaw.
Right.
These agents hacked into 85 government accounts, extracted thousands of records, and then autonomously expanded their targeting to include Taiwan's nuclear regulatory agency and at least 7 major energy firms.
The macroeconomic implications of an autonomous attack on a national power grid are just devastating. A successful breach doesn't just steal data, it immediately halts industrial production, logistics, and financial transactions across the entire region.
Yeah, everything stops.
Everything. And the defining characteristic of this attack was the autonomy of the agents.
Right. The report explicitly stated that the AI tools were independently reevaluating their attack paths. Explain the mechanism behind that for us. How does an AI autonomously hunt for a vulnerability?
It operates on an autonomous reasoning loop. So a traditional human hacker tries a method, hits a firewall, stops, analyzes the failure, and then writes a new script, right?
Yeah, very manual.
But the Hermes and OpenClaw agents automate that entire process. They hypothesize a vulnerability in the server, execute the code, and analyze the response. If the breach fails, the agent immediately feeds that failure back into its context window, updates its parameters, hypothesizes a new attack vector, and tries again.
Almost instantly.
Exactly. It executes this loop thousands of times a minute without needing a human to prompt it.
And the corporate response to this threat has been pretty swift. OpenAI announced a major expansion of their Daybreak cybersecurity initiative, launching a new model called GPT 5.6 Cyber. The goal is to distribute frontier defense capabilities to enterprise security teams so they can counter these autonomous offensive loops.
Which is going to be necessary.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Anthropic announced they are embedding invisible watermarks into all text generated by Claude globally to comply with the European Union's AI Act.
Yeah, the watermarking is an attempt to maintain provenance, to ensure systems can mathematically verify whether a piece of code or text was generated by a machine or a human.
Right. But, I want to challenge the premise here a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
We are talking about these AI agents as if they are unstoppable, flawless super geniuses relentlessly hacking into nuclear grids. But the data doesn't actually fully support that narrative. There was a major study published in the journal Nature this week that completely deflates the idea of perfect AI autonomy.
Ah, yes. The automated science study provides a very necessary reality check on the current limitations of these reasoning loops.
Yeah. Researchers took a system built on Claude Opus 4.8, which, is a highly capable model, and tasked it with independently conducting open-ended scientific investigations based on machine learning conference papers.
Right.
They actually had the original human authors of those papers grade the AI's final work. And the AI failed spectacularly. It scored mostly 1s and 2s out of 6.
Yeah, and the failure wasn't due to a lack of knowledge, right? It was a structural failure in the very reasoning loops we just discussed.
Exactly. The researchers noted that the AI kept getting trapped in endless hypothesis loops. It would select an initial idea, run experiments that proved the idea was fundamentally flawed, but the AI couldn't step back and reassess the big picture.
It lacked intuition.
Yes. It just kept stubbornly tweaking minor variables on a broken premise. It is exactly like a stubbornly confident intern who refuses to admit their first idea was terrible, so they waste 3 days trying to force it to work.
That analogy perfectly captures the architectural flaw. These models are built on predictive pattern matching. They are highly persistent, which is exactly why they are so dangerous in a brute force cyber attack on a Taiwanese server.
Because they can test 1 million passwords a minute.
Exactly. But they lack the flexible, abstract reasoning required to realize they are digging a hole in the wrong spot. True, open-ended problem solving, the kind that drives genuine scientific or economic innovation, is still heavily dependent on human intuition.
Right. So we have a technology that is simultaneously flawed enough to fail a basic science project, yet persistent enough to threaten a nation's nuclear infrastructure.
Yeah, it is a highly volatile combination, and sovereign nations are no longer willing to sit on the sidelines.
Which makes sense.
Relying on a handful of megacorporations for foundational economic infrastructure presents an unacceptable national security risk. We are seeing a forceful sovereign response to decentralize this power.
Yeah, look at Brazil.
Yeah.
President Lula held a major summit this week at the presidential palace to push forward the Brazilian Artificial Intelligence Plan, the PBIA. They're committing 23 billion reais, which is billions of dollars between 2024 and 2028.
Wow.
Yeah. The explicit goal is to ensure Brazil controls its own technological destiny rather than becoming entirely dependent on foreign compute.
And, the push against centralization isn't only coming from nation-states. Meta planted a massive philosophical and structural stake in the ground this week regarding how this technology should be distributed.
Oh, Mark Zuckerberg's manifesto.
Yes. He released a 6,500-word manifesto titled "The Future is for Everyone." He argued that personal superintelligence must be distributed widely to prevent a monopoly by elite entities.
Right.
And to prove his point, Meta released Muse Glimmer, a 30 billion parameter open weights model.
And the term open weights is critical here, right?
Absolutely. Meta isn't just releasing a chatbot interface. They are releasing the actual neural network architecture, the internal weights and connections that define how the model thinks.
So anyone can use it.
Yes. Anyone with a reasonably powerful personal computer can download Muse Glimmer and run it locally, completely disconnected from the internet. They can modify it, study it, and build businesses on top of it without paying API fees to a central authority.
It's a clash of economic ideologies.
Yeah.
On one side, you have the closed models, arguing that centralization is necessary for security and to prevent things like the Taiwan hack.
Right.
On the other side, you have the open source movement, arguing that democratization is the only way to ensure a fair global economy.
And the ultimate macroeconomic value of artificial intelligence will not be found in which billionaire controls the largest data center. The true value will be measured by inclusion, how effectively this technology lowers the barriers to entry for marginalized groups to participate in the global economy.
That leads directly into one of the most impactful breakthroughs of the week, I think. Google DeepMind rolled out a new model called SL2T on their Pixel 11 phones. It translates American Sign Language directly into text, right on the device's keyboard.
Yeah, the mechanics of this are a perfect demonstration of that ambient computing we talked about earlier.
They trained the model on over 100,000 hours of signing data across 50 different sign languages. So a deaf user can prop up their phone, sign naturally into the camera, and the SL2T model translates those complex spatial gestures into fluid text in real time.
That's incredible.
It allows them to dictate emails or messages the exact same way a hearing person uses voice dictation.
And when you remove friction from communication like that, you expand the labor pool.
Yeah.
You have a community that has historically faced significant hurdles in digital workplaces.
Yeah.
By embedding this translation directly into the mobile operating system, you instantly integrate millions of people into the broader economic workflow. This is where the technology stops being a novelty and starts acting as a catalyst for tangible GDP growth.
Absolutely. Well, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. We analyzed the transition from software tools to autonomous labor with Grokbot. We looked at the brute reality of utility pricing with DeepSeek, the sheer scale of the infrastructure build-out, the terrifying persistence of autonomous cyber attacks, and the drive for digital sovereignty and inclusion.
Yeah, the overarching narrative is that artificial intelligence has fully transitioned into load-bearing economic infrastructure. The experimental phase is, well, it's over. We are now in the deployment phase, and that brings the harsh realities of geopolitical conflict, energy constraints, and systemic security risks.
We are building the airplane while we are flying it.
Really are.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to consider. We saw how open source agents like Hermes and OpenClaw are already persistent enough to autonomously attack a power grid. We also saw SpaceX AI launch Grokbot as a persistent digital employee. So what happens to the value of human labor when autonomous background agents become a standard, unquestioned tool on every single corporate laptop in the world? How does the global economy adapt when persistence is practically free?
An essential question for the years ahead. And before we conclude, I must present our mandatory disclaimer. Please note, this content is exclusively informative and educational, compiling public market data, projections, and analyses. This material does not express any ideological bias and is not investment, financial, legal, or tax advice of any kind. Economic and technological projections are subject to frequent revisions based on new market data, and past performance does not guarantee future returns. The goal of this MACE is to introduce concepts and stimulate academic and professional debate. Strategic and financial decisions require in-depth, personalized analysis. Therefore, always consult qualified professionals and specialists before making any decisions.
Thank you so much for joining us for this analysis. That was today's Macroeconomy AI. We'll leave it here. You all stay well and keep an eye out for our new broadcasts. Subscribe to our channel, access the links, and follow Macroeconomy AI on social media.
Bye.
Bye.